The Valorian ship came out of hyperspace with smoke pouring from its engines. It was a diplomatic vessel, not built for combat, and it had barely survived the attack. The ship limped towards Station Harmony 7, sending distress signals on every frequency. Katie Morgan was eating her lunch in the station cafeteria when the alarm started. She was a logistics officer, which meant she spent most of her days counting supplies and filling out forms. It was boring work, but she liked the quiet life on the station. Nothing exciting ever happened here. That was about to change. She ran to the docking bay with everyone else. The Valorian ship had already connected to the station, and medical teams were rushing inside. Katie stayed back. She was not a doctor or a soldier. She had no reason to be involved. Then Commander Daniel Price spotted her in the crowd. "Morgan," he called out. "Come with me." Katie followed him without question. Commander Price was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been running this station for 15 years, and he had seen many strange things. But today, his face showed something Katie had never seen before. He looked worried. They walked through the corridors until they reached the medical wing. Through the window, Katie could see doctors working on a Valorian. The alien was tall, covered in silver fur, with a face that looked like a Volf from old Earth stories. His golden eyes were closed, and machines beeped around him. "That is Ambassador Kethril," Commander Price said. "He was coming here for peace talks. Someone poisoned him during the journey." Katie felt her stomach drop. "Will he survive?" The commander shook his head slowly. "The doctors say he has maybe 1 hour left. The poison is too advanced. There's nothing they can do." "That's terrible," Katie said. "But sir, why did you bring me here?" Commander Price pointed to another room down the hall. "Because of them." Katie looked through the next window and saw 3 small shapes huddled together in the corner. They were Valorian children, cubs as their species called them. The biggest one had dark silver fur and stood protectively in front of the other 2. The middle one had lighter fur with black spots. The smallest one was barely the size of a human toddler, with fur so pale it was almost white. "Those are the ambassador's children," Commander Price explained. "Their names are Wrath, Kira, and Ven. They saw their father collapse. They watched him dying. And now they are alone on a station full of aliens who smell wrong to them." Katie understood the problem now. Valorians were predators. Their instincts were strong, especially in children. If someone smelled like prey, the cubs might attack. If someone smelled like a threat, they would be terrified and defensive. "What do you need from me, sir?" Katie asked. "Our xenobiology team ran tests on everyone aboard this station. Most of us trigger some kind of response in Valorian young. We smell like food or enemies to them." Commander Price paused. "But you, Lieutenant Morgan, have a rare biochemistry. To those cubs you smell like nothing. You are neutral, safe." Katie stared at the cubs through the window. The biggest one, Wrath, was growling at a nurse who had tried to enter the room. His fangs were small but sharp. His claws were extended. "You want me to take care of them," Katie said. It was not a question. The nearest Valorian ship is 6 weeks away. These children cannot stay in this medical room for 6 weeks. They need someone to feed them, shelter them, and keep them calm. Commander Price looked at her directly. "I know this is not your job. I know you have no training for this. But you are the only one who can do it." Katie thought about saying no. She had never taken care of children before. She did not know anything about Valorians except what she had learned in basic training. This was a terrible idea, but then she looked at little Ven, the smallest cub. He was shaking. His tiny body was pressed against his sister, and his eyes were wet with tears. He was just a baby, really. A baby who had just lost his father and was now surrounded by strange creatures on a strange station far from home. Katie took a deep breath. "Okay, I will do it." Commander Price nodded. "Thank you, Lieutenant. I will have supplies sent to your quarters. Dr. Ben Okafor from Xenobiology will give you a briefing on Valorian dietary needs and sleep cycles." "What about their father?" Katie asked quietly. "Ambassador Kethril passed away 10 minutes ago. The cubs do not know yet." Katie closed her eyes for a moment. Then she straightened her shoulders and walked toward the door of the room where the cubs waited. When she entered, all three of them turned to look at her. Roth immediately stepped forward, putting himself between Katie and his siblings. His growl was low and dangerous. Katie did not run. She did not show fear. She simply sat down on the floor, making herself smaller, and waited. "I know you are scared," she said softly. Her voice was calm and steady. "I know everything feels wrong right now, but I am not going to hurt you. I am here to help." Kira, the middle cub, tilted her head. "You do not smell like the others." "No, I do not," Katie agreed. "My name is Katie. I am going to take care of you until your family comes to get you. Where is our father?" Roth demanded. His voice cracked on the last word. Katie felt her heart break. She had hoped someone else would tell them, but she could see in their eyes that they already knew. They were smart children. They had seen their father fall. They had seen the doctors working desperately. And they had seen those same doctors stop trying. "I am so sorry," Katie said. "Your father is gone." Ven let out a small cry and buried his face in Kira's fur. Kira wrapped her arms around him, but her own eyes were filling with tears. Roth stood frozen, his whole body trembling. Katie did not try to touch them. She did not try to offer comfort they were not ready to receive. She just stayed where she was, sitting on the floor, being present. "I am going to stay with you," she said. "For as long as you need me. You are not alone." They did not respond. But after a long time, Wrath slowly sat down. Then Kira sat down too, still holding Ven, and the four of them stayed there together in silence. As the station hummed around them and the stars burned cold outside the windows, Katie had no idea what she was doing. She had no training, no experience, no plan. But she had made a promise and she intended to keep it. These cubs needed someone. And for the next 6 weeks that someone was going to be her, she just hoped she would not mess it up too badly. The first 3 days were a disaster. Katie had moved the cubs into her quarters, because the medical wing was too cold and too bright for them. Valorians, she learned from Dr. Ben Okafor, preferred dark spaces and warm temperatures. They slept during the day and were active at night. Their eyes could see perfectly in darkness that would leave a human completely blind. This meant Katie had to flip her entire schedule. She slept when the cubs slept and stayed awake when they were awake. After 48 hours, she felt like a zombie. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was the claws. Valorian cubs had retractable claws. Just like cats on Earth, when they were calm, the claws stayed hidden inside their paws. But when they were scared or excited or just playing, the claws came out. And Valorian claws could cut through metal. On the second night, Ven got scared by a noise from the ventilation system. He jumped, his claws extended, and he accidentally sliced through Katie's blanket, her mattress, and part of the wall behind her bed. On the third night, Kira and Wrath were playing chase around the room. By the time Katie stopped them, her furniture looked like it had been attacked by a wild animal. Which, in a way, it had. Katie stood in the middle of her destroyed quarters and took a deep breath. The cubs were watching her nervously, waiting for her to yell at them. She did not yell. "Okay," she said calmly. "New rule. No running indoors. If you want to play chase, we go to the cargo bay where there is more space. Agreed?" The cubs nodded quickly, surprised that she was not angry. Katie smiled at them. "Good, now help me clean this up." They worked together to fix what could be fixed and throw away what could not. By the end, Katie's quarters looked bare and strange, but at least nothing else was destroyed. She learned to adapt. She requisitioned special blankets made from a material that could resist Valorian claws. She removed anything breakable from her room. She put padding on the sharp corners of furniture so Ven would not hurt himself when he ran around. But the hardest thing to manage was the food. Valorians were carnivores. They ate meat and only meat. Raw meat, specifically. Cooked meat made them sick. Katie had to go to the station's kitchen every evening and collect fresh cuts of synthesized protein that were designed to match Valorian dietary needs. The cubs ate like they were starving, which Dr. Okafor said was normal for growing Valorians. Katie watched them tear into their meals with their sharp teeth and tried not to think about how those same teeth could tear into her if things went wrong, but they never did. The cubs were rough and wild and sometimes destructive, but they were never aggressive toward Katie. They seemed to understand that she was trying to help them. Slowly, they began to trust her. By the end of the first week, Katie had established a routine. They would wake up in the evening, eat dinner together, then spend a few hours in the cargo bay where the cubs could run and play. After that, they would return to Katie's quarters for quiet time. Katie would read to them from a datapad, translating human stories into simple words they could understand. Then it was time for bed. But before bed, there was one more thing. Every night, Katie brushed her teeth. She had done this her entire life without thinking about it. Her grandmother had drilled the habit into her when she was a child. No matter how tired you are, her grandmother always said, you brush your teeth before bed. It was just something humans did. The first night the cubs saw her do it, they were confused. What is that stick? Kira asked, pointing at Katie's toothbrush. It is called a toothbrush, Katie explained. I use it to clean my teeth. Roth frowned. Why do your teeth need cleaning? Do they get dirty? Katie thought about how to explain this. Yes, they do. When we eat, tiny bits of food get stuck on our teeth. If we do not clean them off, our teeth get weak and start to hurt. They can even fall out. All three cubs stared at her with wide eyes. Fall out? Ven whispered. He looked horrified. Katie nodded. Yes, if humans do not take care of their teeth, they lose them. So we brush them every day to keep them strong. She finished brushing, rinsed her mouth, and put the toothbrush away. The cubs watched every movement like she was performing some kind of sacred ritual. Humans are very strange, Kira said finally. Katie laughed. I suppose we are. She tucked the cubs into their sleeping nest, a pile of warm blankets in the corner of the room. As she turned off the main lights, leaving only a small glow so she could see, she said the same words her grandmother had always said to her. Good night. Don't forget to brush your teeth. It was just a silly thing. A habit from her childhood. She did not expect the cubs to take it seriously, but Valorians had a very different relationship with their teeth than humans did. For Valorians, fangs were sacred. A Valorian's fangs showed their strength, their age, their status in society. Warriors were judged by the sharpness of their fangs. Leaders were respected for the size of their fangs. To lose a fang was a terrible shame. To have weak fangs was a sign of weakness in general. The cubs did not understand that human teeth were different from Valorian fangs. To them, Katie's words meant something much more serious than she intended. Katie said humans cleaned their fangs every day to keep them strong. Katie said fangs could fall out if they were not cared for. Katie ended every night with a reminder about fangs. To the cubs, this was not just hygiene advice. This was warrior training. They began to watch Katie more carefully. They noticed how she woke up every morning at the same time, no matter how tired she was. They noticed how she always finished her work, even when it was boring. They noticed how she never gave up, never complained, never showed weakness. And they noticed that every single night, without fail, she performed the ritual of the fangs. Guardian Katie is very disciplined, Wrath said to his siblings one day while Katie was in the other room. He had started calling her Guardian instead of just Katie in Valorian culture. A Guardian was someone who protected the young. It was a title of great respect. She is small and has no claws, Kira agreed. But she is strong in other ways. Little Ven nodded seriously. She takes care of her fangs. That is why she is strong. Father always said that a warrior's fangs are their first weapon. The cubs looked at each other. A silent understanding passed between them. If they wanted to be strong like Guardian Katie, they needed to take care of their fangs too. They did not tell Katie about their plan. They wanted to make her proud. They wanted to show her that they had learned from her example. And so, while Katie thought she was just teaching them basic manners and routines, the cubs were learning something very different. They were learning how to be warriors, human style. 3 weeks passed on Station Harmony 7. Katy had fallen into a comfortable routine with the cubs. They were still wild and energetic, but they listened to her now. They followed the rules she had set. They even helped with small chores around her quarters. Katy was proud of them. She was proud of herself, too. She had taken on an impossible job with no training and no experience. And somehow she was making it work. Then she walked into her quarters one evening and found the cubs doing something very strange. All three of them were sitting at her work desk. They had tools spread out in front of them, tools that Katy did not recognize. There were small metal files, whetstones, some kind of grinding equipment that looked like it came from the engineering section. "What are you doing?" Katy asked slowly. Wrath looked up at her with bright, proud eyes. "We are honing our fangs, Guardian Katy, just as you taught us." Katy blinked. "I taught you ... what?" Kira held up a small mirror and admired her reflection. Her fangs, which had been small and somewhat blunt before, were now filed to sharp points. They gleamed in the light like tiny knives. "You said we must care for our fangs to keep them strong," Kira explained. "Valorian warriors sharpen their fangs before battle. We thought that since you sharpen your fangs every night, we should start training too." Little Ven padded over to Katy. He opened his mouth wide so she could see his teeth. His baby fangs had been transformed into needle-sharp points. "Am I doing it right, Guardian?" he asked hopefully. "Will my fangs be strong like human fangs now?" Katy stared at him. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She closed her mouth. She opened it again. Behind her, she heard a strangled sound. She turned around and saw Commander Price standing in the doorway. Next to him was Dr. Ben Okafor, the xenobiologist who had been helping her understand Valorian biology. Both men were staring at the cubs with expressions of complete shock. "Lieutenant Morgan," Commander Price said. His voice was very careful and very controlled. "Would you care to explain why 3 Valorian diplomatic heirs are now armed with what appears to be combat-grade dentition?" Katy looked at the cubs. She looked at the commander. She looked at the tools on the desk. "Sir," she said finally, "I think there may have been a cultural miscommunication." Commander Price stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. Dr. Okafor was already moving toward the cubs, his scientific curiosity overcoming his shock. "May I see?" Dr. Okafor asked Kira gently. Kira nodded and opened her mouth. Dr. Okafor examined her fangs with a small light, making impressed sounds. "This is remarkable work," he said. "The edges are perfectly even. The angles are correct for maximum cutting efficiency. Where did they learn to do this?" "From the station database," Wrath said proudly. "We searched for Valorian fang sharpening techniques and found many instructional videos. We also borrowed some tools from the engineering section." "You borrowed tools from engineering?" Commander Price repeated. He turned to Katy. "Did you know about this?" Katy shook her head. She was still trying to understand what had happened. "Let me make sure I understand," she said slowly. "You saw me brushing my teeth every night, and you thought I was sharpening them?" "Of course," Kira said. "You use the brush to scrape your fangs? You do it every day without fail. You told us that fangs can fall out if they are not cared for. You said humans keep their fangs strong through daily care. And you ended every night by reminding us about our fangs," Ven added. "You always say do not forget to brush your teeth. That means do not forget to care for your fangs. Do not forget to be ready. Do not forget to be strong." Katy sat down heavily on the edge of her bed. Her mind was spinning. All this time, she had thought she was teaching the cubs basic hygiene and good habits. But they had interpreted everything differently. To them, she was not just a caretaker. She was a warrior trainer. Her nightly toothbrushing was not a cleaning routine. It was a combat preparation ritual. "Lieutenant," Commander Price said, "I need you to explain to me exactly how this happened." "From the beginning." So Katy explained. She told him about establishing routines. She told him about brushing her teeth every night while the cubs watched. She told him about her grandmother's old saying. She explained how she had no idea the cubs would interpret her words as warrior training when she finished. Commander Price was quiet for a long moment. Then, to Katie's surprise, he started to laugh. "This is not funny, sir," Katie said. "It is a little funny," Dr. Okafor said, still examining Ven's sharpened fangs. "From a cultural exchange perspective, this is fascinating. The Cubs took a simple human hygiene practice and transformed it into a warrior tradition." "But I did not mean to create a warrior tradition," Katie protested. "I just wanted them to learn good habits." Roth walked over to Katie and looked up at her seriously. "Guardian Katie, do you not sharpen your fangs every night?" "No, humans do not sharpen our teeth. We clean them. It is different." The Cubs looked confused. Kira tilted her head. "But you said it keeps your fangs strong." "Our teeth," Katie corrected. "Humans call them teeth, not fangs. And cleaning them does keep them healthy. But we do not file them into points. Human teeth are already the shape they need to be." "Then why are they so small?" Ven asked. "And so flat?" Katie sighed. "Because humans are not predators like Valorians. We do not need sharp fangs to hunt. Our teeth are designed for eating many different kinds of food." The Cubs considered this information. Finally, Wrath spoke. "So humans do not sharpen their fangs because humans are already strong in other ways?" Katie was about to correct him again, but she stopped. She thought about what he was really asking. "Yes," she said slowly. "Humans are strong in other ways. We are strong because we are stubborn. We are strong because we work together. We are strong because we never give up, even when things are hard." Roth nodded seriously. "Guardian Katie is very stubborn. She never gives up. Even when we destroyed her room, she did not get angry. She just fixed it and kept going. And she does the same things every day," Kira added. "Wake up at the same time. Eat at the same time. Brush fangs at the same time. She is very disciplined." "Discipline is strength," Ven said. He was repeating something he had heard, though Katie was not sure where. Commander Price looked at Katie with new respect. "Lieutenant, it seems you have accidentally taught these Cubs some valuable lessons." "I did not mean to," Katie said helplessly. "Sometimes the best lessons are the ones we do not mean to teach." Dr. Okafor straightened up from his examination. "The Cubs' fangs are perfectly healthy, by the way. The sharpening was done correctly. No damage, so what do we do now?" Katie asked. "Do I tell them to stop?" Commander Price thought about it. "These Cubs are the children of an ambassador. When they return to their people, they will have important roles. Perhaps learning discipline and persistence from a human is not such a bad thing." He looked at the Cubs, who were watching the adults with curious eyes. "Just try to avoid any more cultural miscommunications," he added. "We do not need them learning any more human warrior rituals." After the commander and Dr. Okafor left, Katie sat with the Cubs. She tried to explain the difference between teeth and fangs, between cleaning and sharpening, between human habits and warrior training. The Cubs listened politely. They nodded at all the right moments. They said they understood, but that night, when Katie said, "Do not forget to brush your teeth," all three Cubs grinned at her with their newly sharpened fangs and said they would never forget. Katie gave up trying to correct them. Some battles were not worth fighting, and secretly she was a little proud of them too. The attack came without warning. Katie was asleep when the alarm started. Red lights flashed across her quarters and a loud siren screamed through the station. The Cubs were instantly awake, their ears flat against their heads and their fur standing on end. "What is happening?" Kira asked, her voice high with fear. Katie grabbed her communicator. "Morgan to command." "What is going on?" Commander Price's voice came through, tight with stress. "We are under attack. 3 ships just came out of hyperspace. They are Kethvari pirates?" Katie felt her blood go cold. The Kethvari were a splinter group from the Valorian Empire. They were criminals and murderers who rejected the peace between species. They had been responsible for many attacks on diplomatic vessels. They were also the ones who had poisoned Ambassador Kethril. "They are here for the Cubs," Katie said. It was not a question. Yes, they want to take them hostage. Commander Price paused. Lieutenant, I need you to protect those children. We are sealing your section of the station. Do not open the door for anyone except security personnel with the correct code. The code is 7-7-3-9. Understood, sir. The communication ended. Katie looked at the cubs. They had heard everything. The bad people are coming for us, Ven said quietly. His small body was trembling. Katie knelt down so she was at their eye level. Yes, but I'm not going to let them take you. I promise. She moved quickly. She pushed her heavy desk in front of the door as a barricade. She grabbed her emergency kit from under her bed, which contained a small sidearm and some basic supplies. She had never fired the weapon except in training, but she was glad she had it now. Get behind me, she told the cubs. Stay low. Stay quiet. The station shook as explosions rocked the outer hull. The pirates were forcing their way in. Katie could hear distant sounds of fighting, shouts and weapons fire and screaming metal. The cubs huddled together in the corner of the room. Roth stood in front of his siblings, his claws extended and his sharpened fangs bared. He was only a child, but he was trying to be brave. Guardian Katie, he said. If they come through that door, let us fight. No, Katie said firmly. You are children. Your job is to stay safe. My job is to protect you. But you are only one human, Kira protested. You have no claws, no armor, just a small weapon. I have enough. Katie did not feel as confident as she sounded. But she had made a promise. She would die before she let these pirates take the cubs. Time passed slowly. The sounds of battle grew closer. Then there was silence, which was somehow worse. Katie's communicator crackled. Security team to Lieutenant Morgan. We are outside your door. Opening now. Code 7-7-3-9. Katie let out a breath of relief. She moved toward the barricade, then she stopped. Something was wrong. The voice on the communicator had the right code, but it did not sound like any of the security officers she knew. The accent was different. The tone was wrong. Wait, she whispered. Before she could react, the door exploded inward. The force of the blast sent the desk flying across the room. Katie threw herself to the ground, covering her head. When she looked up, 6 figures were standing in the doorway. They were Valorian, but their fur was dark gray instead of silver. They wore black armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. Kathvari, pirates, the leader of the group, stepped forward. He was tall and scarred, with a missing ear and fangs that had been filed into jagged points. The cubs of Kethrol, he growled. The High Council will pay well for your return. Katie raised her sidearm. Stay back. The pirate leader laughed. It was an ugly sound. A human? You think a human can stop us? He gestured to his soldiers. 2 of them moved toward Katie, while the others headed for the cubs. Katie fired her weapon. The shot hit one of the pirates in the chest, but his armor absorbed most of the impact. He stumbled but did not fall. Then they were on her. One of them knocked the weapon from her hand. Another slammed her against the wall. Katie fought back with everything she had, kicking and punching and biting, but she was just one human against trained warriors. Stupid creature, the pirate holding her snarled. You should have stayed out of our way. From across the room, Katie heard Kira scream. She turned her head and saw the pirates grabbing the cubs, trying to drag them toward the door, and then something happened that nobody expected. Wrath bit the pirate holding him. Not a scared, defensive bite. A calculated strike, aimed at the gap between the pirate's helmet and his neck armor. His sharpened fangs sank deep into flesh. The pirate howled in pain and released him. Roth dropped to the ground and immediately attacked the legs of another pirate, his claws slashing through the weak points in the armor. Kira followed her brother's example. She leaped onto the back of the pirate holding her, her newly filed fangs tearing at his ears and face. The pirate screamed and tried to throw her off, but she held on with her claws. Even little Ven joined the fight. He was too small to do much damage, but he sank his needle-sharp baby fangs into a pirate's hand and would not let go. The pirates were in chaos. They had expected scared children, easy targets. They had not expected 3 small Valorians who had spent the last month learning discipline and determination from a human guardian. Katie used the confusion to act. She grabbed her fallen weapon and fired at the pirate leader. This time she aimed for the joints of his armor where there was no protection. He went down with a grunt of pain. "You will pay for this," he gasped. Katie stood over him, her weapon pointed at his face. "Maybe, but not today." Security teams finally arrived, real ones this time. They poured into the room and quickly secured the remaining pirates. Katie lowered her weapon and let out a long, shaky breath. The cubs ran to her immediately. Ven wrapped his arms around her leg and refused to let go. Kira was shaking but trying to hide it. Roth stood straight, his fur covered in blood that was not his own. "We protected you, Guardian," he said. His voice was steady, but Katie could see the tears in his eyes. "Just like you protected us." Katie knelt down and pulled all 3 of them into a hug. She did not care that they were covered in blood. She did not care that protocol probably said she should not do this. She just held them tight and felt them hold her back. "You were so brave," she whispered. "I am so proud of you." "We remembered what you taught us," Kira said, her voice muffled against Katie's shoulder. "Never give up. Never surrender. Take care of your fangs." Katie laughed even as tears rolled down her cheeks. "Yeah, you definitely took care of your fangs." Commander Price arrived a few minutes later. He looked at the scene, at the injured pirates, at the cubs with blood on their teeth, at Katie holding them like she would never let go. "Lieutenant," he said quietly, "are you all right?" Katie looked up at him. "Yes, sir. We are all right." The commander nodded. He looked at the cubs with something like amazement. "Reports are coming in from the witnesses. Your cubs took down 4 armed pirates." "They are not my cubs," Katie started to say, but Ven looked up at her with his big golden eyes and said, "Yes, we are." Katie did not argue. She just held them tighter and let the security teams clean up the mess around them. Later, the official report would describe the incident as a regrettable situation involving minor dependence and unauthorized use of maintenance equipment as weaponry. But the real story spread through the station and beyond. 3 Valorian cubs, raised for 1 month by a human woman, had fought like warriors to protect their guardian, and it all started with a toothbrush. The last 2 weeks on Station Harmony 7 passed quickly. The pirates had been captured and were waiting to face justice. The station was being repaired, and Katie continued to take care of the cubs as if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. The story of what happened had spread across the station. Every crew member knew about the human logistics officer who had protected 3 Valorian cubs from armed pirates. They also knew about the cubs who had fought back with their sharpened fangs. People looked at Katie differently now. They nodded at her in the hallways. They made room for her in the cafeteria. Some of them even thanked her for what she had done, though she always said she was just doing her job. The cubs changed, too. They were calmer now, more confident. The fear that had haunted them since their father's death had faded. They smiled more. They laughed more. They still sharpened their fangs every night. But now Katie did not try to stop them. One evening, about a week before the Valorian ship was scheduled to arrive, Raph asked Katie a question. "Guardian, when we leave, will we ever see you again?" Katie was brushing her teeth at the time. She paused, looking at Rath's reflection in the mirror. "I do not know," she said honestly. "The galaxy is very big, and humans and Valorians do not often cross paths." Roth nodded slowly. "I understand. But I want you to know that I will never forget you. None of us will." Kira and Ven, who were already in their sleeping nest, made sounds of agreement. Katie finished brushing and turned to face them. "I will never forget you either. Taking care of you was the hardest thing I have ever done. But it was also the best thing. Even when we destroyed your furniture?" Kira asked with a small smile. Katie laughed. "Even then? Even when Ven bit the engineering officer?" Roth added. "He deserved it," Ven said seriously. "He called me small." Katie tried to keep a straight face. "Okay, maybe that time I was a little annoyed." But yes, even then, she walked over to the sleeping nest and tucked them in, just like she did every night. It was a routine she had created without thinking, and now she could not imagine ending a day without it. "Good night," she said softly. "Don't forget to brush your teeth." The cubs grinned at her, their sharpened fangs gleaming. "Never," they said together, the day the Valorian ship arrived. The entire station gathered at the docking bay. It was not just any ship that had come. It was the Imperial flagship, the largest and most powerful vessel in the Valorian fleet. And it carried High Matriarch Velsara herself. The matriarch was ancient, even by Valorian standards. Her silver fur had turned white with age, and she walked with the help of a staff. But her golden eyes were sharp and intelligent, and her presence commanded immediate respect. She was also the grandmother of Wrath, Kira, and then, when the airlock opened and Velsara stepped onto the station, the cubs ran to her. She caught them in her arms and held them tight, murmuring words in the Valorian language that Katie could not understand. Then the matriarch looked up and her eyes found Katie in the crowd. "You," she said. Her voice was strong despite her age. "Come forward." Katie's heart was pounding as she walked toward the most powerful Valorian in the galaxy. She stopped a few feet away and bowed her head respectfully. "High Matriarch." "It is an honor." Velsara studied her for a long moment. Her gaze was intense, as if she was looking into Katie's soul. "You are the human who cared for my grandchildren," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, Matriarch. You protected them when assassins came for their lives. You fought for them even though you are small and weak and have no natural weapons." Katie was not sure if she should be offended by that description. "I did what anyone would do." "No." Velsara shook her head slowly. "You did what a Valorian would do. What a guardian would do." She paused. "My grandchildren speak of you constantly. Guardian Katie says this. Guardian Katie says that. Guardian Katie teaches us to be strong." Katie felt heat rising to her cheeks. "I just tried to take care of them. You did more than that." The matriarch's lips curled in what Katie now recognized as a Valorian smile. "You changed them. For the better?" She reached out and placed a clawed hand on Katie's shoulder. It was a gesture of deep respect. "They tell me about your nightly ritual," Velsara continued. "The sharpening of fangs. The sacred words you speak each night before sleep." "That was a misunderstanding," Katie said quickly. "I was just brushing my teeth. It is a human hygiene practice. I did not mean to start any kind of tradition." "And yet you did." The matriarch's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Word has already spread to the fleet. Young Valorians across a dozen ships have begun the practice. They sharpen their fangs each night and repeat your words." Katie stared at her. "They do?" "They do. Do not forget to brush your teeth, they say. It has become a saying among them, a reminder to prepare themselves, to stay strong, to honor the human way." Little Ven tugged on Katie's hand. She looked down at him. "It means be ready," he explained. "Be strong. Be human." Katie felt tears stinging her eyes. "That is not exactly what I meant when I said it." Velsara made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Sometimes the meaning we intend and the meaning others find are different things. But that does not make either meaning wrong." She released Katie's shoulder and stepped back. "Guardian Katie Morgan, you have done a great service to the Valorian Empire. You have cared for the children of an ambassador. You have protected them with your life. And you have taught them lessons they will carry forever." The matriarch reached into her robes and pulled out something shiny. It was a medallion on a silver chain, engraved with symbols Katie did not recognize. "This is the mark of the Guardian," Velsara explained. "It is given to those who have proven themselves worthy of protecting Valorian young. You are the first human to ever receive it." Katie accepted the medallion with trembling hands. "I do not know what to say." "Say nothing. Just know that you will always be welcome among our people." The time for goodbye came too quickly. Katie knelt down to face the cubs one last time. Wrath stood straight and tall. He had grown so much in the past 6 weeks. "I will make you proud, Guardian." I will be strong and brave, just like you. I know you will, Katie said. You already are? Kira hugged her tight. I will miss you. I will miss our stories and our games and our quiet time. I will miss those too. Katie stroked Kira's fur gently. Take care of your brothers, okay? Keep them out of trouble. I will try, but they are very good at finding trouble. Finally, Ven, the smallest cub, who had been so scared when they first met, looked at Katie with eyes full of love. You are my guardian forever, he said, even when we are far away. Even when we grow up, you will always be my guardian. Katie pulled him into a hug and did not try to stop her tears. And you will always be my cubs. All three of you. She stood up and watched as they walked toward the ship with their grandmother. At the airlock, they turned back one last time. Don't forget to brush your teeth. Ven called out. Katie laughed through her tears. Never. The airlock closed. The ship detached from the station. And then it was gone. Jumping into hyperspace and carrying 3 small cubs away from the human who had loved them, Commander. Price found Katie still standing at the observation window an hour later. You know, he said, standing beside her, I think you may have accidentally started a cultural revolution. Katie watched the stars, thinking about 3 small Valorians who were now somewhere out there in the galaxy, sharpening their fangs and remembering her words. Sir, she said, I am just as confused as everyone else. But she smiled as she said it, somewhere in the galaxy. A generation of young Valorians were preparing for their futures with sharpened fangs and a human saying on their lips. They were learning to be stubborn, to be persistent, to never give up. They were learning to be strong in the way humans were strong. And it all started because one tired human woman just wanted some kids to practice basic hygiene. Katie Morgan went back to her job as a logistics officer. She counted supplies. She filled out forms. Life returned to normal, but every night before bed she looked at the mark of the guardian hanging on her wall. And she smiled and she brushed her teeth. And she whispered goodnight to 3 cubs who were very far away but would never be forgotten. Don't forget to brush your teeth. Be ready. Be strong. Be human. It was just a silly phrase from a grandmother who had died years ago. But now it meant something more. Now it connected species across the stars. Now it was a battle cry and a lullaby and a promise all at once. And somewhere, on a Valorian ship flying through the darkness between stars, 3 cubs were sharpening their fangs and thinking of their guardian. They would never forget her, and she would never forget them. The end.